To that parking dilemma in Troy now. It's costing people hundreds of dollars there.
Dan Levy is live in Troy right now. And Dan, there are some upset people involved here.
Oh, that's putting it mildly, Mark. Yeah, we have received many calls over the course of the last several days from irate, angry, just disturbed people who tell me that their car was towed from this parking lot. It is the former site of the Uncle Sam parking garage. I can tell you that they were angry because they had to fork over $350 to get their cars back after they were towed. They were here visiting the Troy Farmers Market, and those people insist that they didn't see any signs telling them that they couldn't park on this private lot. As I mentioned, the Uncle Sam Park garage once stood here. Now, when we got here today, we did see several signs all around the perimeter of the property. Some of them were visible, but some of them were knocked over. Some of them were not visible. Now, I spoke with the owner of the property who insists that the signs were up and they were visible over the weekend when the farmers market was taking place. That's not the same story you hear from people whose car was towed. I can tell you that this property is used right now for the production company that's shooting in Troy right now, and they're shooting the Gilded Age, and you need one of these parking permits. So unless you have one of those, you shouldn't be here. Just wanted to set the stage for you to tell you what the dilemma was here in Troy. And coming up all new at 5 o'clock and 6 o'clock, you will hear from one irate woman who found out the hard way that she wasn't supposed to park here. I should point out that there is a farmers market website on which you are told, you are notified that you are not to park on this property. So you will hear from a woman who apparently didn't know that, and you will hear from the towing company operator, and you will hear from the owner of this property. It's all coming up new at 5 and 6 o'clock. We'll see you then. Mark and Sabrina, back to you.
Dan Levy live in Troy. Dan, thank you very much.
Spending part of your weekend visiting the Troy Farmers Market, supposed to be a joyful and relaxing experience.
Yeah, well, unfortunately for a handful of folks who stopped there this past weekend, that experience turned out to be, well, much more of a day of anger and frustration. Get this, they had their cars towed. Didn't even know they were parked illegally. Dan Levy has now been looking into what happened out there at the farmers market. He joins us live now from the Collar City. Dan, what are you finding out?
I'm finding out that there are a lot of angry and outraged people here, Steve. Rachel, good evening to you. Yeah, the spot where I'm standing right now at one time was a 4-story high Uncle Sam parking garage. As you can see, parking garage isn't here anymore. It was torn down. Now, when folks come to the Troy Farmers Market, they apparently believe that they can still park here, but unfortunately, too many of them find out the hard way they cannot, and it is costly. It is costly because they're going to pay to get their cars back. We have received several phone calls into our newsroom in the past couple of days from angry, irate people whose cars were towed from this private lot. Now, compounding the anger, the reality that they had to pay about $350 to retrieve their car from the towing company. People tell us they didn't see any signage telling them they couldn't park here. The property owner, on the other hand, insists there is plenty of signage. And besides, he says the farmers market website distinctly warns people that they cannot park on the site of the former parking garage, but clearly not everyone sees the warning.
I felt very violated, and it was very frustrating knowing that I had no choice but to pay cash for something that I didn't do wrong. There was no wrong here, and I probably will never go back to Troy again.
People are driving over the curb, over the sidewalk, around barricades, moving barricades. You don't have a lot of recourse at that point to protect yourself in the event that someone does get into an accident or does get hurt. So from a liability perspective, we don't have a choice.
All right, so the only cars that are supposed to be parked here are the cast and crew members of the HBO series The Gilded Age, which is currently filming in Troy. Only those folks with these parking permits are supposed to be here. Now, coming up all new at 6 o'clock, you will hear from the towing company operator, and you will also hear more from the property owner about what people need to do and why they shouldn't be here, why it could be a very expensive venture for him, too, if the cars remain here. That's coming up at 6 o'clock. Live in Troy with coverage you can trust. Dan Levy, News Channel 13. Steve, Rachel, back to you.
Just feels unfair. Such a big hit to people to have their cars towed like that. Ugh.
Reading the signs is important.
Yeah.
Well, tonight, several people who attended the Troy Farmers Market this past weekend are upset and angered after their cars got towed away.
Yeah, it cost them hundreds of dollars. Unfortunately, those people found out the hard way. The site of the former Uncle Sam parking garage is no longer available for public parking. Dan Levy spent the day in Troy looking into this dilemma. He joins us live with what he found out. And Dan, good evening to you. You just spoke with the owner of that tow company.
I sure did. I spoke with the owner of the tow company. I spoke with the owner of this property, and I spoke with an angry woman who had her car towed here, and she didn't have a good weekend. Livid, angry, outraged. Those words only begin to describe the emotions of the folks who were here at the Troy Farmers Market, hoping to spend a relaxful and joyful time at the market, only to find out when they got back here that their car had been towed. What they found out the hard way is that this vacant lot on weekends is now off limits to the public. Now, several phone calls came into our newsroom from people who had their cars towed out of this lot, and compounding their anger or their misery, they had to catch a 20-minute Uber ride and then fork over about $350 to get their cars back. The people I've spoken with tell me they didn't see any signage telling them they couldn't park here. However, the property owner insists there is plenty of signage around here. There's even a video on the farmers market website showing them where they can park. But the people who are supposed to park here are only cast and crew members from the HBO show The Gilded Age, which is currently filming in the Collar City. Now, those folks have parking permits on their dashboards, but if there's no parking permit, the cars, to the chagrin of many, well, they get towed.
There was a few people, there was a couple of young people that didn't even have money. They didn't, and their Uber left. Now they're stranded. It was just awful. It was very emotional.
Obviously, people aren't happy when they come down to get their car. They are upset. But at the end of the day, it comes down to being able to read a sign, respecting a property's owner. You wouldn't want people pulling up and parking on your front lawn. You would do the same thing. You would have the car towed.
I'm grateful that you're out here doing this story so that more people can be aware that the farmers market has a lot of public parking available within 2 blocks of this site, and that's where you should bring your vehicle to enjoy the farmers market here on a Saturday.
And Anton stresses he doesn't want to tow anybody, but he has to for liability purposes, and that is what is done. And meanwhile, the woman you heard from, Mrs. Audino, who had her car towed, she said she's filed a complaint with the Attorney General's office. We're live in Troy with coverage you can trust. Dan Levy, News Channel 13. Mark and Sabrina, back to you.
Yeah, just a headache, an expensive one for a lot of people. Dan, thank you.